Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day, there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we're going to talk about what's near and dear to my heart. I am a marketing person by trade. That's what I love doing. And I love talking with other marketing experts about it. And so please join me in welcoming Branden Cobb to our program today. Welcome, Branden. How are you?
Thank you, Deb. Excited to be here. Excited for our discussion. Looking forward to it.
Perfect. I love it. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we'll jump in. So Branden Cobb joins us today with over 15 years of marketing leadership experience. He has helped some of the world's most iconic brands and is just getting started. He is currently engaged in research that could transform the marketing field while continuing to lead active businesses to further success. Oh my gosh, a short bio. I love it when people have short bios. But Branden, tell us how it is that you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so, started off really in content creation, specifically filmmaking and things like that,
Okay.
and public relations too, regarding it all in the entertainment industry. And I think what that does is really teaches you how to tell a story, how to persuade people, how to a lot of skills that are important to marketing, but they're only a layer of marketing. It's not. There's so much more to marketing than just the storytelling and the content creation. So, but that was by not just going into the industry with too generalistic of a perspective and rather really fine-tuning a specific skill set in the industry. I was able to then later expand into a more general management leadership type role. So
I love that. Let's start with one of the basics, because I think it is actually, it seems really weird, but people still are confused. What the heck is marketing? Because so many people think it's sales. So what is marketing?
Yeah, and when you said so many people think it's sales, I think a lot of people think of it as like promotion. So when you look at like the 4 P's of marketing, the product, the place, the price, and the promotion, so many people are thinking of it as the I guess the advertisements, the social media, these kind of things. But there is a lot of strategic aspects that go into marketing regarding what do consumers want. What is out there as far as competitors? Where is there a gap? Where can you go in and meet the need that is currently unmet with a product, but also how you're delivering it, where you're delivering it, and at what price point? And so, I would say marketing is a lot of times people say, well, if I'm like launching a company or I'm launching a new product, even I'm an established company, and when should I work with marketing? And if you just think it's sales, then you're probably going to wait till you've got the product and everything, and you're just going out to try to create the sales. But really, marketing, I would say, begins at the very beginning, and it never quite ends. So because even after the sale, you're working on loyalty and bringing referrals and different things like that, and reviews and whatnot. So I would say marketing is intertwined with every other department, every step of the consumer interaction with a company. And that's also another thing, is because marketing crosses over all the different, touch points with a company, is this understanding that consumers don't look at a company in departments or silos. They look at it as one experience with the company. And so, try to make it quick and easy on that, if somewhat, but that's how I would describe marketing.
Right. And to me, like you said, it's at the very start, because it's it is part of determining, is there a demand for what it is that you want to sell? Because we all think, ooh, we've got the greatest idea in the world. Well, that could be, but if nobody wants to pay us money for it, then it's not going to work. So marketing needs to be involved at that in the very start. Is there a demand? Can you produce it and provide it at a price point that people could buy it? And that's one of the other things people are like, oh, this is really fantastic, but it costs so much to produce that you've priced it out of the market. And then of course, my big thing is, who the heck are you selling it to? I have so many people who I will say, who is your target audience? And they smile and they say, everyone. And it's like, no, I don't think there's probably any product or service in the world really that is for every single person. And the problem is, when you think you're selling to everyone, you're selling to no one.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
that's exactly right.
Right. So how do you get people to focus on that part? How do you get them to figure out, this is who is going to pay us?
Yeah. Well, number one, you can take a product. Well, you would maybe come up with like some personas, put yourself in the consumer's shoes and discover what kind of customers you may have, and then also what kind of messaging or unique product features and differentiation you could do to meet those consumers' needs. So it may be even under one brand, but has some products that meet different consumers' needs, but not every product is for everybody. So understanding, putting yourself in the consumer shoes. And I think, I've been talking a lot about AI and personalization lately. And so I think, the world of marketing is really moving more and more to a one-to-one type of interaction. So really trying to not just even group people into a persona per se, but rather making it personalized for the individual's specific data points on them and everything. But with all that to say, I think you really got to look at number one. I like to think of aggregate demand versus residual demand, and so the aggregate demand. What's the total amount of demand for this product, service in the market? Residual demand, after the competitors and current market share that's already been taken, how much remaining demand may be there. And this is a way you can kind of decide where to pinpoint to focus on.
Right. Yeah, because on some of those, especially something like residual demand, and I was reading some of your information, it could be that there is somebody who has such a corner on the market that there's not a lot of residual demand. I live in the world of Coca-Cola, right? I'm in Atlanta, and you do not say the word Pepsi here. And it's really funny because of course there are places that sell it. But yeah, I mean, Pepsi just really doesn't exist here. And because it's Coca-Cola, and that is how you say Coke. I mean, that's just, and you might say different things, but the cool thing is, if you can figure out what that leftover is and reach them, you've got a perfect audience.
Yeah. Well, and you got to find out why is there leftover,
right?
Too. And that goes back to your product planning and understanding what's not being met. But yeah, I mean, I would say, the aggregate demand is a good macro level metric to understand in the long term what kind of market is there for this product or service. But the residual demand, the leftover demand, the demand you can go in and take without necessarily taking market share from somebody else, that's a more tactical, immediate, short-term type of thing. And if you'd like, I mean, I'm happy to give a few kind of examples.
Oh, definitely.
Here as well.
Right. That'd be perfect, because people are like, this sounds good, but so yeah, specific examples would be fabulous.
Well, I have two. So one is a bit of a hypothetical that I think people can relate to in today's world. And then I have one that is from an actual study with real data and everything. So I guess in this first hypothetical one, and again, don't have the data, but I could intuitively maybe think that this is a possibility, and somebody could go examine if this is the case or not, if they're entering the electric vehicle market. So let's say that the maybe it is possible for aggregate demand to be increasing, but residual demand to be decreasing. And what I mean by that is that the global or the regional demand for EVs is probably increasing. I mean, year over year,
it's just one of those things that is a growing market.
That's right. But it is possible. And again, this is just, I guess, a hypothesis that maybe residual demand could be shrinking. And what I mean by that is, if there's too many companies entering the electric vehicle market faster than the aggregate demand is growing, then the residual demand, it's going to become saturated with competition. And that's going to be good for consumers with driving down the price and improving innovation and everything. But what that's going to do is, if now it's not just Tesla, but you got Nissan and Ford and Chevy and everybody else entering the EV market, then the aggregate demand may not be growing enough to sustain all those entries. So that's an example where it's possible that the aggregate demand's growing, but residual demand's shrinking. But one other example, which is what I said is a true example with data behind it. There was a guy, an author named Yuri Simonson, in 2010 wrote a article about eBay auctions. He took data from 2002, and what he found was, the most buyers bought between 5 to 9 p.m. Makes sense. Most people are off work, and they may be buying. And there was a lot of relation to the fact that when more people are bidding, a lot of the bids come in the last hour or so. Let's say on back when you got to think back in eBay time, not just so much like Amazon straight buy now. So basically, what that meant was it was all the books that were telling people how to sell on eBay, how to make the most money on eBay. We're saying sell between 5 to 9 p.m. That's the time the most buyers are coming. What they found, though, is that the amount of sellers who would end their auctions between 5 to 9 p.m. increased at a greater rate than the number of buyers that were buying between 5 to 9 p.m. So actually, while there was more aggregate demand, a seller would have had a better chance to complete the sale or get a bid of any sort outside of those 5 to 9 hours.
There's kind of less clutter.
Less clutter, and they would have also had a bet. Statistically, they were selling at a higher price point. So I think this is a concept where a lot of times people are attracted to the shiny object or the current trend of and everybody goes, but when too many people go at once, it can become saturated. And there's actually one more reversed aggregate demand versus residual demand option. It completely a reverse situation, which is kind of interesting. That if you don't mind, I'd tell you.
Sure.
Too.
Oh, that'd be great.
So there's a company in Austin, Texas that the land phone lines. It's a dying industry. The aggregate demand is declining. Not the opposite of the EV market. The aggregate demand is declining for land
because we all have smartphones.
Yeah. But the big players, AT&T, Verizon, or their local communications, a lot of them withdrew from the landline market, and they withdrew too fast to where there became a residual demand. And this company
people still wanted the landline,
especially when like electric goes out or there's a tornado or in business. So the fact was it may have previously had no residual demand, but now so many people have exited the market so quick that there actually was created a residual demand, and they understand that the aggregate demand is going to continue to decrease, but the residual demand, they're going to ride that wave down.
Right.
So,
I love that. And that's a great example because, I mean, we just ask our friends, how many of you still have a landline? And a good portion are going to say no. Now, I have one sitting right here next to me, partially because it's also attached to a fax machine, which I use every once in a while. I mean, maybe once every 6 months, but when I need it, I need it. But yeah, when we have, like, say, major storms or power outages or things like that, your landline is what is still going to work. And I think people forget that until there's a situation where they need them.
And I would imagine, I mean, haven't quite thought about what other, where there may be that gap there, or that, but is like, I would imagine there's other industries that people have exited too soon. And there's still something to milk out of that industry, as long as somebody's there to serve it.
Right. And of course, the funny part is, a lot of times whoever is there still to serve them might not be doing a good job. But if they're the only one, then, you're like, oh, okay, I guess that's who we're going to go with.
That's right. Yeah.
And which, that's always, because it's funny, we always think that, hey, we want to provide the best product, the best service, but we also want to make money. And, and so it's kind of one of those things where it's like, yeah, we really, if we're the only one playing, we don't have to be good at customer service or whatever, they're stuck with us. I think we see that, like, with, say, restaurants, where they might be the only one in a neighborhood. If you want to eat out, you're going to go to Moe's. And, Moe's can give you bad customer service, bad food, but if they're the only restaurant, you're still probably going to go there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it kind of goes back to the supply demand, but this is another facet of way to look at it. But that also goes into, there's a variety of theories about competition, how, a tournament type theory of where you're competing that is going to create a better, you're going to have to perform better. So there is a good, there is a benefit for having competition for the consumer. Maybe for the individual company, they're better off not having so much competition. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in the example that I gave with the restaurant, I mean, if somebody were to come in and provide just a little bit better service, then, they're going to get more. I heard something, and it hasn't been that long ago, where so many companies are fine with being average, whatever, providing average service and average product, because, that in many cases is the less expensive thing to produce. I mean, it costs more to produce a Rolls Royce than it does to produce a Ford. Now, and so that's why you have more of the average, but the opportunity then is for that Rolls Royce, or maybe you're not quite the Rolls Royce, maybe you're the Lexus, right? So you're doing just above average, but you're really going to have demand for the product or service.
Yeah. And I think, that goes back to when you're strategically planning what kind of product or what market to enter. A lot of times that you can make a chart with, like, a bit of a cross there, where, there's 4 quadrants, and you can't quite be, again, everything to everyone, but map out where your competitors are, and map out maybe where you can be. That's a little bit different from the cluster of competitors.
Right.
So,
and in many cases, the product is exactly the same. I tell people, long gone are the days where we had something truly unique. And so it's the other things that go along with it that differentiate. Maybe it is the customer service. It could be a price point. I mean, there is a reason why Walmart is the king of what they do. But, it's finding that, what is that kind of little extra that you can do to set yourself apart. And that comes back to marketing, to figure out what is that little difference that is going to set us apart, where more people are going to want to work with us.
That's right. Yeah. And I think it was Elon Musk who said that he believes or predicts that at some point everybody will be able to afford everything. Like it's just going to be yeah. And so
It's
as a
kind of
result,
Star
though,
Trekky, but that's all right. I
yeah.
like Star Trek.
So let's just say though that the difference though is the experience
Right.
or the branding that yeah, I mean, I guess the experience, the feeling, the prestige of a product doesn't mean that you can't afford it. This person can't afford a t-shirt and this person can't afford a t-shirt, but why is one t-shirt $5 and one t-shirt's $200?
Right.
So, but the prestige, the branding, the experience that goes around it. And so yeah, I guess I mean, yeah, you hit it on that there's not a whole lot different necessarily with products, but it's more how maybe you understand the consumer's mindset and appeal or make the consumer relate in a way that you want them to relate and come to the consumer mindset that you want them to be in.
Right. It's interesting, as as we're recording this, it's prior to the Super Bowl and it will air after the Super Bowl. And but I was looking at some things. I mean, clearly there's always the commercials, which those, they long gone are the days where they debuted at the Super Bowl. I mean, a lot of them are already out there, but that was always something that especially when it was a commercial for something and you thought, I'm not sure what product they were selling, right? Because they were into, like, the herding cats is always one of my favorite ones, where you had the horses herding cats, right? And people, they thought it was great. I mean, it's been probably 20 years ago since that commercial was on. Most people, even then, could not tell you what company it was for, and it didn't pertain to what they did at all, but it got your attention, and that is part of what marketing does. But when you didn't know what the product or service was, it meant nothing. Yeah. We know when we see a Clydesdale that it is for Budweiser. They don't have to show the beer. They don't have to show anything like that. We just know it is, it's a Budweiser commercial. And it's been interesting to see kind of, what they've been talking about. But then you talk about supply and demand. And an article that I was reading today was talking about ticket prices. Now, I don't care about either team. So, that's kind of the thing. But they were saying that the ticket prices are so expensive that, like, Travis Kelce's mom will not be in a box. She will not be in a box next to the lovely, talented Taylor Swift because she can't afford that ticket price. Now, you would think that maybe Taylor would pay for the ticket for her, which might happen. But, that always baffles me when somebody says, hey, the ticket price is $250,000. Now, clearly, they know that people are going to pay that, or they wouldn't offer it. I mean, you're not going to price yourself out of the thing, but so pricing is always, that's one of the hard things to figure out. I mean, it's, it's even sometimes, obviously it depends on what the product or the service is. A minute amount makes a big difference. And so that's, but that's marketing working with sales. So talk to us more about how we figure out what the heck pricing is.
Yeah, well, going back to the AI concept, I think machines can, as long as you're putting in the right data points, can help predict or forecast what that pricing should be. And then you can make adjustments from there. So there's a lot of possibly maximizing or optimizing of pricing that AI can help with. And then when you said the small amounts, yeah, I mean, there's definitely concepts on precision pricing and the fact that those slight differences in what the consumer may think, all that has to be a really well thought out price that really must be worth the price that you're putting on there. So, yeah, and then there's dynamic pricing, right? So I guess like airlines and that kind of thing, that you change your pricing based on how much demand's left, how much time, their projection of what's the probability or likelihood that it's going to be filled or left empty. And really interesting. This is also, I guess you could say, Star Trekky, but I was watching the other night Jimmy Kimmel making a joke about dynamic pricing at restaurants. And so I've never seen this. I don't necessarily think it exists, but the concept was like, what if Uber pricing, Uber's or Lyft is a dynamic pricing, changing on high demand
costs
versus
more sometimes depending on when and where and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So what if at the restaurant, it costs, between 6 to 8 p.m. to sit down and eat at that restaurant. It was more expensive than if you went between 3 to 5, which I guess you kind of have with the happy hour already. But the point being that like the menu prices change, but then not just that the menu prices change, but let's say everybody's ordering a certain salmon or a steak or something. And so that as the orders are coming in, the pricing's changing too. So it's like basically like I don't know. I get it. Very interesting concept that I don't think will quite come to fruition. But the point is that in some of these cases, it goes back to that residual versus aggregate demand, because if everybody's ordering the steak and actually you may ask, what's the least popular item on this menu? Because I want to go for that.
Right. We're going to push the salmon
price
today.
Yeah. But it helps but that kind of concept, also the aggregate versus residual demand, helps companies, I guess, with their planning of supply chain, and helps them kind of like it levels everything out. So, yeah.
Well, and I mean, that's why we see, say, in a restaurant, the specials of the day. They might have got a better price on the salmon, so they bought more, and things like that. Years ago, I worked for a marketing agency, and the founder of the firm, I remember he always said, charge what the market will bear. And which is absolutely right. And it was so interesting because now this was 30 years ago. We did not have any pricing on our website and it was a marketing agency. We nowhere did it have pricing. And granted, I mean, that was pretty much the early days of doing stuff like that. But yeah, you met with somebody before you determined what the price was. And his concept was, say we're developing a marketing plan for somebody. That was what the product was. Attorneys and doctors are going to expect to pay more just because they charge more than, say, a nonprofit. And so his big thing, even back then, was to have flexible pricing. And I know that's a challenge. And obviously it depends on what you're doing, because if you're too flexible, you might run out of your product or service or whatever. And then I also have the discussion with people where, if I've offered it for $10 to this person and $100 to this person, and the two talk to each other, they're both annoyed, right?
Well, that, but also you got to be careful of like discriminant pricing,
right?
Putting any one certain customer category group, just treating them unfairly. So, yeah.
Right. And one of the things that I talk to people about is the discount pricing. Now, I mean, sometimes you do discount pricing to get rid of stuff. I mean, all sorts of things, but we have so many people who, will say, okay, we've got a slow period, so we're going to offer, half off or a special deal or whatever it is. But then they expect that the next time, well, hey, I only paid $100. I'm not going to pay $500. And more importantly, they talk to each other, and so then you do have the people who paid more who get annoyed. So I always tell people, really think about if you're going to do discount pricing, because it can come back and bite you pretty easily.
Yeah. I actually was having a discussion with some people who bought a Tesla recently, and before they did a discount, and they were upset, said they weren't going to buy again because the brand had usually held its value, but when they immediately discount the new price, now it brings all the other prices down, and they felt so yes. I think one way to get around that is possibly the way, I guess, some stores do, which is like a 30-day price match or price adjustment. It's called price adjustment. So, but there certainly is going to still be a cutoff point. So you may make people happy that you've given them a 30-day guarantee. If we lower our price, we'll adjust it back down to you. But what happens on day 31? So there's always a cutoff point of some way.
Well, and I always wonder, like I watch a lot of late night TV, and it will say, the first 100 people who order this, get whatever. And so it's okay. So if you're 101 and you tell them, I'm not going to buy it unless I get that, then they'll probably give it to you. But what is the point where they stop? Now, they might always do it. I mean, that just might be their way to get calls, and they're going to, you're so special, I'm going to give you that discount. And so that it's really not a discount. It's the real price, because that was what they figured. And so, yeah, pricing, I mean, it is so tricky to get it right.
And another way on that, because it is what's the big difference between this number and one more? That is, it's a problem at these cutoff points. So you could always step down or tier down, and it starts at the first 100 people get it for 100, the next 100 people get it for 125, the next 100 people get it for 150, and or reverse that. But anyway, the point is that if you tier it down, it may also ease off the edge of upsetting people too. So.
Right. Because of course, the thing that so many people forget in marketing is that part of what we're dealing with marketing is the perception. Are people thinking we're being ripped off, or, ooh, hey, I got a deal? Is it worth what I'm paying? All of those various things. And that's one of marketing's biggest things that they're dealing with is what is the perception that is being put out there?
Yeah, absolutely. Perception's key. And if you make somebody, that goes back to the concept that if everybody can have everything, then what's the difference? It's, I guess, people's perception, their experience, making them feel content and happy and excited about what they're getting from you. So.
Right. And talking about Super Bowl commercials, I was listening to something on the radio the other day, and they were talking again about Budweiser and the fact that, you've always got your core Budweiser people that love the Clydesdales. Now, I might not ever buy Bud, but I like the Clydesdales. But they really had what, many people would say was the major misstep with targeting their Bud Light commercial with an LGBTQ person. It was a person who has a lot of influence. So I'm sure they were thinking this person has a lot of influence, but there was such a mismatch between who normally bought Bud Light, which are kind of your blue collar guys, right? And they just never understood. And so they said, now what they've had to do for months now is damage control. And to me, that's the worst type of marketing we need to be doing.
Yeah, a couple comments on that. One, you do need to understand your base, and you can move your base, but you should do it in increments. You shouldn't just go.
Yeah, I think that was what it was like. Oh my gosh, we went from this extreme to that extreme.
Yeah, you can go from here to here, but not here to here. And then once you're here, you can go to, and keep moving your base. There is the value that if you think society's way of thinking is changing, that it can potentially be better to get in front of the consumer.
Yeah, you're going to be the first to do something.
Because you'll be on the right side of history in that case. But again, you don't want to be so I mean, you don't want to be 20 years ahead. You want to be 1 year ahead, 2 years ahead, so the customer keeps following you. The other thing that I think they did wrong there was they put it out there and then they just fully retracted it. And so it was like a major
there was never an explanation. It was oops.
Well, it was so then you're defending both sides. I mean, because you did it, but then you just take it back. So the point is that if you decide you're going to do something, you also kind of need to hold your ground and stick with it, and not just when the heat turns up, drop it and everything. So it was a very confusing thing, but the it'll be interesting to see what they do. If I haven't kept up with whether or not they have a Super Bowl ad this year, but if they do and what that looks like. But I know on the Clydesdale stuff, one thing that I'll say is this is another concept of marketing when you're tying a certain I guess item, in this case an animal, but that you would see out in the world somewhere else. And I'm not saying you see Clydesdale everywhere, but you see horses and different things. So there's a potential that when you see that in your daily, or not depending where you live, but in your daily life or wherever, there's a schema there that remember you reconnect whatever you're seeing out in the world back with that brand. And so it's like the Aflac duck. If you see a duck somewhere, maybe you'll think of the Aflac.
You do, right? You see a duck and you go Aflac, right?
Yeah. So there's a value to tying your brand to items that are continually reoccurring out in the real world too. So
right. So that's great if you're a big company with a big budget.
Yeah.
What about the small guys that are just trying to kind of make it?
Yeah, I think the small guys, you got to be really ingrained in your community, and you got to be really try to distinguish yourself that you are locally owned. You've got local knowledge, things that are different than what a corporation who they try to do. You could make the argument, try to do everything the same way for everyone. And okay, well, what works in Atlanta may not work in San Diego, or, and so you may say, hey, we're locally owned. We've got we're deeply ingrained in the community. We give back to this community. And whereas the corporation's here to extract from this community. And so I think those are kind of arguments you can make in your messaging as a small to medium-sized company in a local region.
And it's interesting because we're seeing that more and more with millennials. They're wanting to know that they're working with companies that make a difference. And really it's, or buying from them, whatever it is. And it's funny because it doesn't seem to matter what the size is, but they want to know that company is not just in it for the money. And it's funny because people fuss about, millennials. I'm like, well, y'all raised them. I mean, it's, what did you expect? But I think that is something that more and more, we really are seeing people go, yeah, but what have you done for your community? Or more importantly, did you do something wrong for your community?
Yeah. Well, I think that goes where a lot of millennials, I'm a millennial, so I guess you'd have a kind of your basic needs met. Now you can start thinking about the other things, and I ultimately, I guess that's a good thing that you can think about further things than just meeting the basic needs. But what with that being said, there's a lot of concept out there, corporate social responsibility and different things that companies need to be moving the world forward and not just extracting from the world. But what I'll say is, you're as a marketer within a company, your at least your legal obligation and your primary obligation is to create wealth for the shareholders and things like that. And so if that's the case, engaging in these corporate social responsibilities and things, the way I look at it is if it creates more revenue because that's what your customer cares about, then I mean, you're still, yes, there's an ethical perspective of that you should do it because that's good for the world or this or that.
Not just because you think you're going to make more sales.
But you need to be thinking, if I also do this, and it can be all good, and it's ultimately, I guess, good that that's what the consumers are wanting. But if I do this, I'm meeting the needs of the consumers, which will ultimately generate more sales. So it goes back to, I guess, the consumer should be holding the companies responsible,
Mm-hmm.
not the
Right.
companies holding
Mm-hmm.
themselves
Mm-hmm.
responsible. And we're seeing that more and more
Mm-hmm.
now. And yeah, I think it's good.
Right. And it doesn't matter how big your business is. I mean, you can do things. Maybe you are a fairly, a small one person business. Well, then, you come up with $500 and you sponsor a kid's softball team. So then your name is on the back of every one of their shirts. And or you serve on boards. Whether it's your chamber, your church, whatever it is, and you always make sure that they know not just your name but your company name, because that's the important thing. But it's and to me, when a small company makes those efforts, it means more than the big company who just writes the check. And I mean, you look at like the sponsorships of whatever it is, a football stadium, all those. It's like, yeah, they didn't care. They just wrote the check. They just wanted to know that their name was going to be up there in big lights. Did they do any research? And the small business had to research it. They had to know, okay, this is my sales rep's son's softball team, so it's really important to everybody here. And so then to me it just means more when you know that they have thought about it.
Yeah, I think this goes back into being truly invested beyond the dollar, being invested in the community. And there's I guess a kind of making me think of a lot of things about authenticity and just really being genuine in your brand and stuff, because consumers can see through it if if you're not.
We're smart people.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are not easily explainable, but more easily understandable. So and I think that's where the consumers are now, is they may not be able to explain or describe exactly what a company is doing, but they'll be able to they'll be able to feel I guess it goes back to the feeling, the perception, that kind of thing. And sometimes feelings and perceptions are not actually true or accurate either, but nevertheless, that might be the most important thing to the consumer decision making. So
and again, it's easy on some of these. Years ago, I worked for a very large insurance company, life insurance. And one of the absolute most popular things that we did was our employees were math tutors at the local, the closest middle school to us. And I mean that, and it was understood that if you were one of those people, you got a 2-hour block, and your boss did not mess with that 2-hour block. And we had, I mean, people, they said that was why they worked there, because they knew that we were, it was important to the community. There was zero money investment for us. It was, and now obviously there was a time investment because we were losing 2 hours of that person's time. But it was just one of those things that made you feel good, and these people knew, all the employees that did it. And not everybody did. I mean, you couldn't. There's just, it was a big company and the school wasn't that big. But for those who did it, they loved it. I mean, and they did it year after year. And more importantly, they bonded with those kids. I mean, they knew when they graduated from college and, all sorts of stuff. And again, it was a simple thing to do, but it made a huge difference.
Yeah, you're hitting on a lot of topics that I love to talk about. And you could pretty much do a podcast on many of these topics, a full hour on a lot of these topics. So we're going an inch.
We're doing the 35,000 foot level.
Yeah. But that is very interesting because yes, you're right. When you maybe ask for a certain donation at the checkout and stuff. I have mixed feelings because, number one, sometimes it can be annoying to the consumer and different things, or they don't want to feel obligated. But the point is, for the cashier, maybe they really feel that they're contributing to something, a cause that they're really doing, and it helps retain your employees, helps keep your employees motivated, helps keep excitement. And so, taking what otherwise may be possibly a lack of excitement of a job or a company, but adding something that makes people feel better about what they're doing and really give a purpose to what they're doing. I think there's a lot of value in that.
Right. So let's talk about kind of the opposite of this, the fads. What about when a company goes, woo, this is really cool. We're going to do, it's kind of the squirrel syndrome, right? How do we decide, okay, this is something we're going to put time and investment into, or you know what, this is really just a fad and we're not going to go there?
Yeah, I think a couple of different things. One, in a way, you have to engage with fads, or otherwise you're not cool, or you're not on you're just not current and modern. At the same time, if you can understand what probably is a fad versus what is a sustainable a long-term thing is going to enable you to understand. It's better to set the expectations. That this may be very popular right now, but it's going to wear out over time. And so if you set those expectations, you could probably cut investment at a certain point in time, because there's probably a lag there of you've invested time and energy or money into it. And but at some point you should cut it off before it wears out and before it starts to fall off. So I think you need to engage with fads. You need to engage with trends to just stay current. But it can be a time suck too, because you're always chasing the next thing.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. Yeah. One of the ones that I always think is that one of the strangest, silliest, stupidest things, and this is probably a little before your time, are pet rocks. I mean, people spent, so I just brought up their Wikipedia page. It was a box and it had holes in it, like it had a real pet in there. And it had a rock in it. And people,
I know what these are. Yeah,
people spent more than $4 for these things. And these people who came up with this really stupid idea became millionaires. Now, it really was a fad that went away very quickly. But, it was just, I remember thinking, you're buying a rock. Can't I just go out to my yard and get the rock and all this? But and I think maybe part of it was just so silly and so stupid. But yeah, it was, but we see that it always is kind of interesting to me how something like that catches on. And then of course it really did fade. I mean, it was, less than a year probably that this thing happened, but do you want to be the company that does that? Or do you want to be kind of the second who comes in?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing with what you're saying there is goes into another whole topic of packaging up and presentation of things.
Right.
You may have put a rock in a nice package, and you may have told a nice story behind it with a little card or something that told that rock story. And yeah, it's again, everybody could have a rock, but what was the story? What was the experience? What was the feelings it did invoke around it? And not just that. I mean, now I guess you've got social media groups, or there's communities around, communities around a brand that you can feel part of that community by having or being, I guess, owning a product of that brand. So, yeah, but on whether you want to be first or whether you want to be second on that. You know what? I don't really know, because I think that's like such a quick fad that I don't necessarily know you want to be second. But at the same time, there is a concept that you have to sell an industry to people first when they're unfamiliar with it. And so in general, if you're first to market, you have a better chance of being possibly remembered like Coke or like Kleenex or Post-it, or
your name becomes the product. Kleenex Google, would obviously be the biggest, doesn't matter what that box says. When you reach for it, you're getting a Kleenex. You don't say a tissue. It's a Kleenex.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So there could be and that doesn't mean that second or third, or because I think I said Google, and Google would not be the first. It would have been American Online or what, Yahoo, or different things. But nevertheless, it increases possibly your chance to become that name of the item.
Right.
But But I think that is more applicable if it's going to be a long-term thing.
Mm-hmm.
Kleenexes aren't going away, but the pet
Right.
rock, maybe in that case, you see if it takes off,
Mm-hmm.
let them sell the industry, and
Mm-hmm.
if it does, then maybe you hop in and see what you can do
Mm-hmm.
in there. So
right. And it is interesting to think about being the first, because like we said, there's really no unique things, and we say that, and there were things like pet rock, and so but again, that comes back to marketing. Where are the holes that people go to? I've been doing marketing a very long time, and we were always taught, solve someone's pain. And I like to change that to how can we bring them pleasure? Because pain to me is just such a negative, obviously, thing. And so how can we make them happy? How can we, maybe we are solving a problem, but rather than taking away their pain, how are we making them happy?
yeah, I like that. Another way I think of it, a lot of times companies tell you what they're selling you, but it's really what is the consumer buying
Mm-hmm.
from
Right.
you.
Mm-hmm.
So there could be a
Mm-hmm.
disconnect there. What you're saying as a company that you're selling
Mm-hmm.
them may not be the same as what
Mm-hmm.
they say they're buying from
Mm-hmm.
you. So in the pet rock example, um, you may say, I'm selling you a story around this pet
Mm-hmm.
rock, this and that, but maybe the consumer is saying, they're thinking, I'm lonely or something. I need
Right.
something to,
Mm-hmm.
and so you got to think
Mm-hmm.
why. That goes back to when
Mm-hmm.
we said at the beginning, personas and things. You're trying
Mm-hmm.
to understand their
Right.
motivations and but yeah, pain. I mean, these are all ways that you can start to brainstorm
Mm-hmm.
and come at it from different angles
Mm-hmm.
of pain points and needs and
Mm-hmm.
desires, wants, and also maybe things that they don't know they
Mm-hmm.
desire or want yet. I
Right.
think it was Henry Ford who said that if he had asked the consumer what they want, they would have said a better horse or a
Mm-hmm.
faster
Right.
horse
They
instead
had
of a
no
car.
concept that they
So
needed a car.
that's
Um,
right. Yeah.
yeah, and in marketing, it comes back to looking at all of those other features. What are the competitors doing? And where are they successful and where are they not? I think that's, that kind of is back to that residual. If maybe it is that they have priced something out of the range, so you're going to come in at a lower price point, or maybe a higher price point. I mean, it depends on what's going on, but that is where marketing comes in, is really analyzing the buyer trends, all of those various things.
Absolutely.
So what are things that you see, because we don't have a ton of time left, where do you see people making mistakes?
Spending in ineffective ways,
Okay.
or put it, and that could be spending money, it could be spending energy and time.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, there's a major marketing is not great right now with its attribution of in the integrated marketing perspective of
Mm-hmm.
what's working, what's not
Mm-hmm.
working, or even what you think is working and
Mm-hmm.
what you think's not working, how they maybe have some type of synergetic
Mm-hmm.
effect and working together. So uh, I don't have it. I mean, when you introed me and you talked about doing some research that
Mm-hmm.
could be changing and stuff, I'm actually, in addition to all the clients that I'm consulting and different things like that, I'm engaged in a doctorate program at University of Florida where I'm researching a project of understanding the
Mm-hmm.
different mixes of marketing efforts
Mm-hmm.
and what that actually does to the consumer
Mm-hmm.
mindset, which will, by doing that, help on that
Mm-hmm.
attribution side. So I think
Mm-hmm.
uh, just not understanding what's effective, what's
Mm-hmm.
ineffective, and yeah, that kind of thing.
Right. We always have the, well, this is the way we've always done it problem.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I always find very interesting is when budgets get cut, the marketing budget is almost always cut first. And to me, now I am a marketing person, but to me, it's the most important thing.
Yeah.
We could cut other things, but if we're cutting how we, what our products and services are and how we're then that just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. If marketing was better at explaining
We
its
don't market
value and
ourselves, right?
yeah,
Mhm.
explaining, being trackable, these
Mhm.
kind of things, it would help
Mhm.
the financial string
Mhm.
pullers there continue to
Right.
pump into marketing, but
Mhm.
also on that fact, when there is a
Mhm.
downturn, um, there's a likelihood other
Mhm.
competitors are also reducing
Mhm.
their marketing. And if
Right.
you keep your marketing at the same level or
Mhm.
possibly even increase
Right.
marketing,
You're going to be
you could
better.
take over
Mhm.
some market
Right.
share for when
Mhm.
it does pop back up.
Mhm.
So
Right.
yeah.
And you mentioned the financial, the bean counters. It is difficult sometimes to put a value on what marketing does. I mean, the salespeople can say we sold 1,000 of this, and marketing is kind of nebulous. So you have to show overall, okay, you sold 1,000 of those, but you sold 1,000 of those because we gave you the right message to tell when you were selling those things.
Yeah, uh, that's right. And there's a lot of lag.
Mm-hmm.
That okay, you do this today.
Mm-hmm.
How that carries over
Right.
to other
Mm-hmm.
periods. It's not easy
Mm-mm.
to do, and that's why it doesn't really exist in a
Mm-hmm.
an accurate or proper way.
Right.
Uh, but that's where when you going back, what are people doing
Mm-hmm.
wrong? I just there's certainly a lot of room for improvement
Mm-hmm.
there. So,
Right. Well, oh my gosh, Branden, we are almost at the top of the hour. So tell us more about what your company is, how people find you, and what are the services that you provide.
yeah, so I'm with marketingexec.us, and basically what we're doing is providing fractional chief marketing officer
Okay.
services, and that comes in a variety of perspectives. So it could be helped a lot of small to medium sized companies or venture capital backed companies or companies
Mm-hmm.
internationally who are. I think you said you have some international
Mm-hmm.
listeners, so we've helped companies come in internationally who have established companies overseas, but
Mm-hmm.
they want to enter the U.S. market.
Mm-hmm.
Help them launch here and things
Okay.
like that. And so on the fractional side, what that means is you're splitting your time across multiple clients.
Right. You're
You're
not a
not.
full-time employee.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose, I think, is more to make the business self-sustaining,
Mm-hmm.
and so setting up their infrastructure, setting
Mm-hmm.
up their strategies, but then ultimately kind of enabling, getting the wheels
Mm-hmm.
turning, so then they can ride on their own.
Right.
And so yeah, so I've been helping anywhere from small to medium sized
Mm-hmm.
companies and even Fortune 500
Mm-hmm.
companies. And but in those cases they have an established
Mm-hmm.
department. They're more looking for a consultation
Mm-hmm.
type thing. So
Right.
yeah, it varies, but that's been providing
Mm-hmm.
these fractional CMO services. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
My name is notice that it's spelled Branden,
Mm-hmm.
and then COBB as in boy. Or you can check out on
Mm-hmm.
marketingexec.us. And the other thing I would say too, if you liked what you heard in today's podcast, I've been on, I don't know, 30, 40 other podcasts over the last year or two. And I try to make every podcast a bit different of
Mm-hmm.
topic. So if you go on, you could listen to some others
Right. You've
and
got a
dive
media
deeper in other
page. Yeah.
directions.
So
Yeah.
lots of other great information.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. Well, Branden, this has been, a great discussion. Like I said, I'm a marketing person, so anytime I get to talk about this, to me, it's really fun. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Well, when we're talking about what are marketers doing wrong, or where is marketing going in the future and things, I would just say uh, marketing is an art and a science, but it's shifting more towards becoming a science. More and more of marketing is being able to be explained why this causes this, and we got a long way to go, but I would anticipate and watch for that more of the explanation of why things are happening is going to continue to be able to be explained.
I love it. So much fun. And I've had a wonderful time chatting with you. This has been so great. I'm Deb Creer. I've been speaking with Branden Cobb, and that's Branden. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.